In this video, we'll take our guitar pedal to the next level by making our lives easier with custom reusable components. We will continue to build the visual elements of our application by adding custom fonts and shapes. In QML, you do not only have access to various component types, such as the image and window types we have looked at in the previous section, each providing its predefined functionality. We also can define our own QML types to reuse in our applications. This ability to create your own types forms the building blocks of any QML application. Doing this makes our application more modular, reduces redundancy, and makes it easier to adapt and maintain. Where could we apply this already? Let's first look at the screws we placed in the previous section. Initially, we placed screws by adding 4 image components. Each one has a reference to the screw image we want to show in each corner of the app. We only need one reference for this image, as it is a shared attribute between all the screws. The only difference is where we are placing them. Let's create an inline component. An inline component is like a template from which we can create objects by declaring instances of them. If we wanted to use it in multiple files, we would need to create a separate QML file to create the component. But this is for another time. So, we will create the screw image component that derives from image and sets the source image to the screw, like before. Now we can update the old image components by renaming them and then removing the old references to the image file. Build and run to see if everything is still working as intended. Great, everything looks the same, and we have cleaned up our QML, so it is easier to maintain consistency and reduced redundancy in our UI. What next? Well, guitar pedals usually have several labels across their interface identifying their input and output, as well as some branding or product name. So we can start to build a text component label where these elements might be in the UI. We'll start with the pedal name in the middle. Starting with the text component, we can specify the text we want to display and its size, then roughly position it in the middle of our app. We will build and run to see how it looks. It looks okay, but it could also use some decorative elements around the text to frame it in the horizontal bar of the background image. To do this, we can add some thin rectangles above and below the text and group them in a column component. Column is a type that positions its child items along a single column. It can be used as a convenient way to vertically position a series of items without using anchors. We can wrap the text component with the column and set its default spacing of child elements. We will also move anchoring from the text to the column so all the children are positioned roughly as before. However, we will keep the center alignment for the text. Now we can add the rectangle components above and below the text, specify their color, and size them appropriately. Let's look at the progress. We now have a basis for creating a reusable element to build other labels for our guitar pedal, the input and output labels, for example. You may notice that the label doesn't fit correctly in the space yet. We will adjust the spacing later once we select our font and make this into a reusable component. So, we need to identify what elements might change as well as setting some default property values. For this app, we will create a property for the text, line size, and line color. We will start by changing the column to an inline component, like how we approached the screw earlier. We will name it info text and give the component an ID to reference in the children. Now we can define the properties we wish our component to have. We will use a property alias named text for the text. Property aliases are properties that hold a reference to another property. Normal property definitions allocate a new storage space for the property, whereas a property alias connects the newly declared property to an existing one. This means we only need to specify that we are updating text rather than diving into the child components of our inline component. Then, we can create the remaining properties for the line width, height, and color that will be passed to the 2 rectangle child components. We can update the children to reference the properties, making it easier to update and maintain. This is a great step forward, but one thing still missing from our component is customizing the text. In the previous steps, we imported 2 fonts into the project, one for the branding and another for the other labels. We can load them into our app and add another inline component to manage the text. You can load fonts in QML using the FontLoader QML type. We will add 2 towards the top of our window, one for each font. These can then be referenced for the custom text component. Let's create a custom text component named device text that references the Russo font by default. The font family and font weight will point to the respective FontLoader ID. We will also specify a default font size in pixels and a font color. We'll replace the text component in info text, define another property alias for the font, and clean up some of the remaining properties, such as the text property and font size, which will now be initialized in the instances. Now we have a framework for creating several styles of labels across our application. Let's start by creating 3 instances, one for the branding, one for the input, and one for the output. With our new component, we can easily customize the text, font size, line elements, and positioning and spacing by simply calling our info text component. As our central time blender label is larger, we will give the components a little more spacing. Let's also make the lines for the input and output shorter to match the text length. In this video, we've advanced our guitar pedal app by incorporating reusable inline components, enhancing our UI with custom labels, and improving the modularity and maintenance of the codebase. We introduced the concept of properties and property aliases to update component properties efficiently and utilized FontLoader for custom text styles. These concepts should help you create dynamic, visually appealing applications, showcasing how modularity, customization, and detailed property management transform the app's design and functionality.